Wow, reworking these plans for Art, the awesome rolling toolbox, has turned into quite the job. I spent a bunch of time getting the cabinets sort of dialed in, and then I started thinking about how I'm going to make the drawer stop. Just so there's not any confusion, I'm working on the plans for Art, the awesome rolling toolbox. What I want to do is work a few bugs out, improve Art, and release those plans. So there's a little gray area between Art and Smart here where we're still working on Art. That's the plans that I'm trying to get out. That's going to be the trailer that so many people have asked for the plans for. So I'm not changing how Art functioned. I'm only changing a few details, but these details I want to get just right, and I want to take them over into the next shot. In the last video, I showed how I had worked out these little drop-ins on the dados where the drawer would then have a bottom rail on it that would drop into these. Somebody mentioned in the comments of that video, I should make it go up and just use that dado on the bottom of the drawer to drop on that. I went ahead and did that here, and I made it go up 1/8 of an inch. I need to figure out how I'm going to make that. So I decided to stop and work on my adjustable dado rig. To make a bump up like this, I added this little piece of material here. I set it right where I wanted it. And then I realized that the cabinet sides are handed, so that detail would be in the front on a right and the front on a left, and they would be mirror images of each other. So one of the ways around that is to do that detent, that drop in on the dado in the same position in the front and the back. And so then the side could just be rotated around. The problem with that, if I put this little piece of wood on right where I want it, then I would need to put a piece on down here, and it would have to go in exactly the width of the material and in that inch. So I could do that, and I could then screw it on. I had planned on just gluing this in place. I could find the exact spot for the width of the material, and then, you know, when I route this, it would do the front and the back, and then the material would be handed. And I may do that, but I'm letting you sort of look in the mind here of the design of what I'm doing and another possibility that I'm thinking about. And I want to get this right before I go on with finishing the design of the trailer, because I've got to change all the cabinets, and I want to get it, spend the time doing this, and then I can do, you know, the mass production in design. I also want to be able to step these. So I have set this up so that from the area here, which represents right where the dado will be, I want to have exactly 2 inches from the bottom of one dado to the bottom of the next. And so I set up this rail to the right width, and then I put in this drop-in 1/4 inch spacer. Now these spacers, I've drawn in 8 of them, and I could do that many, but they could also be movable. The actual dados in the rig are spaced exactly where I want them, and I could just have one in the front and one in the back and just move them to whatever spacing I'm going for. So the first one will give me exactly 2 inches from the bottom of this dado to the bottom of this dado. Now the reason I went with a 1/4 inch instead of, say, 3/4, because in this case I'll be using 3/4 so they won't sit tight in the dados. I'll have to put them on and slide them tight. The next one will be exactly parallel with the previous one, and I'll start on the bottom of the cabinet sides and go from there. And then the next one is another inch and another inch and another inch, and then the end is another inch. So basically I'm going to use these to line up, and then most likely I'll use a clamp to clamp this onto the piece and hold it in place. So these spacers are not going to hold it in place. They're just going to be an alignment tool. The bushing would ride on this set-in surface, and the cutter would be right flush with this. In fact, to make this, I would put this all together, and this little piece here would stick out too far. So I've got it exacted a 1/16 right now, but I would actually cut this so that it'd probably be an 1/8 or heavier than a 1/16. And then my first cut, I would just cut with the router and that would perfectly line it up. I'm going to build this in the shop, so I'll go over that if that's confusing. And I'm going to provide this model up on SketchUp warehouse once it's done and I've actually built it. This section here is adjustable so that all I have to do is say I'm going to make a 3/4 dado. Then I would just take a piece of 3/4 material and I would put it in here right up against where the cut's going to be. And then I would take this piece and loosen up the knobs and move it right over until it butts up against it. And then if you're doing cabinetry and you're doing those really tight cuts, then you would squeeze it just a little bit, not really hard, just a little bit until it is snug, pulling it out, and then you get that good fit. I'm not going to need that on these cabinets because it's a loose dado. This will work great for all of my cabinet parts that I need to make for the Smart Shop, but also it will work in my finished carpentry. This is a great tool to have. What I'm thinking about doing on the cabinet sides, and I emphasize the word thinking, this is just the design process, and just like houses and remodels, I go in one direction until I go in another direction. Cut a dado from top to bottom, and I'd come in 1 inch and then make it a 1/2 inch wide and make it 1/8 of an inch deep. After all of the sides are cut with their dados for the drawers, then in a separate operation, I could set up the table saw with the fence in exactly the 1 inch position here and run each piece through, flip it over, run the other side through, and get these shallow 1/8 inch dados. Pop the piece in and have it stick up. Glue it and put a couple of pins in, or I could just screw it in place. Making this piece wouldn't be any harder than making a piece in the bottom of the drawer, so I'm not adding any work. I'm just moving it from one application to the other. And running these dados is a little bit more work, but with the dado head set up, passing these through is going to go really quick and be very accurate. I'd probably make these instead of a 1/2. I'd probably make them 7/16. Leave this slot here at 1/2 and then just pull these tight to the front when I glued them and put the pins in or screwed them. So they'd be referenced to the front edge, but there'd be a little bit of slop in there. I could make them tight and adjust the dado cutter, but I'm also thinking about production and what is necessary. And I don't think there would be much advantage to having a tight fit. I'm liking this detail better than any other that I've come up with so far, but I'm going to keep noodling on this and working on it until I get it just how I want it before I move on to finishing up. Well, that's how design works in my mind, whether I'm designing a house from scratch, a major remodel, or building out the Smart Shop. I'm always working on things and reworking. And once I build something, I look at it really hard and go, if I were going to build it again, I would do this, this, and this different. Not that I don't like the way I did it and came up with, but things can always be improved, which is one of the reasons I have dropped using the moniker The Ultimate. There's no such thing as the ultimate. The ultimate means that you've gotten there, it can get no better. No such thing. But I know that there's a better way to do everything, and I'm always looking for a better way. And you guys help me so much. I read the comments, and like I said, this revision here is a direct iteration of my wheels spinning after I read a comment. So keep the comments coming. If you like these design videos where I'm covering SketchUp software and tools I'm designing and just the design process, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, but most important, share the channel with others. Let's grow this community. Thanks for taking the time to watch. Have a great day.